Hi, and welcome to our brief tutorial on how to use the CentralReach Client Portal. We're very excited to bring you this feature and to give you this way of being able to keep track of your child's progress and be an active part of their treatment team. So I'm going to just kind of run you through the basic features this morning. As I said, this is a very quick tutorial, and we will always, both myself and any of the clinicians that you work with, your BCBA or BCABA, be happy to answer questions, to walk you through how to accomplish various things in the client portal. All of the clinicians have received training in how to interact with the client portal, so they are all available to you. And I am available to you as well. So if you have any difficulty with the client portal, if you're not able to create a password, for example, that's been kind of a common one, feel free to reach out to me. I will also be putting up some troubleshooting tips on the website, along with all the other information that we have, the basic, there's a written tutorial, there's the access to this video will be there, and so forth. So we're trying to make as many resources available to you as possible to really help you feel comfortable with this. All right, so the first thing that you do with your client portal is you need to log in. And if you are logging in for the first time, you will need to go through the process of clicking forgot password first time user. Then the way the process is supposed to work is it will send you an email, kind of a typical setup there for signing up for a particular website, access to a particular website. As I said, some folks have had some difficulty not receiving emails, and I'm looking into that, and I will put up some troubleshooting tips and other information as that becomes available. The login that you will use, the username, is whatever the main email address is that we have in your system. Typically, that will be the one that sends you the DocuSign. So if I have any DocuSign documents that we have for you, whatever email address that goes to will be the one that is your username. You can always check with us, and Tamara and the front office will also be sending those out as they send them out to all new families, but if you are an existing family and you don't have access to that information, just reach out to myself or to Tamara. Okay. But let's just, for the sake of moving forward, say that you have your username and your password. You would come here to login.centralreach.com and put in the username and the password. You see, I have a whole bunch of them. And then click on login. And this will take you to your dashboard. And the dashboard has several features that we're going to talk about. And there's two main sections to it. There's this sidebar with the icons, and then there's this middle section with 4 boxes in them. CentralReach calls them widgets. And for the most part, anything that you can access through the widgets, you can also access here on the sidebar. There's a couple of exceptions to that. There's no sidebar icon for the activity and call log. And conversely, there's some items here on the icons sidebar that you don't get in the portal. So I'm going to run through the icons because they're actually more comprehensive, and point out to you where you also would be able to access that information on the widgets. Okay. The first is the dashboard icon here, and that returns you to this dashboard. The sidebar here always remains in place. So if you're anywhere else in the system and you want to come back to the dashboard, you just click on the little car dashboard icon there, and it brings you back here. This team icon will pull up a list of your team members. The information that's available for the team members here is really just about the office. So if you click on, so for Tamara here, she's the person that I have assigned to this test patient. The information that's pulled up here is Tamara's basic office information, the office address and the office phone number. This is not the place to go if you need to reach a team member quickly. because this, again, this is really just office information. It's not their personal information. You should, with your team members, have established a way to communicate short-term, immediate kinds of situations. So if you're running late, you've gotten a flat tire, or they've gotten a flat tire and they need to get in touch with you immediately, the best way to communicate that, right, of course, is through text message or through a phone call. But you won't be able to find their phone number here. That should already have been something that you've exchanged. So this really, it just gives you a list, essentially, of the people who are in your team. All right. Moving on, though, to the more useful functions, the next is messages. And messages is essentially an internal email system that is available to you to message members of your team. The system basically is set up just like a typical email address. So you have an inbox right here. This is my inbox, and I have a message. Ooh, yay! Clinician needs to test me a message. So, and you can click on that. It brings up the message. In this case, it says, "I sent you a task to complete the BLAF." And that's to alert me as the patient or the parent client here, that I have a task that's been assigned to me and what that task is. And we're going to talk about tasks in a minute. And one of the really nice functions that we have here in CentralReach is an internal way to provide you with assessment documentation to complete. So we'll take a look at this BLAF in a minute. It's not necessarily applicable to all of you, and not all of you will get a BLAF to complete, but it's a quick and easy form that I wanted to show you how to complete. So if the BCBA needs additional information to engage in assessment, they can get it from you internally through the system, and that becomes an automatic part of your child's medical record, and it just keeps everything all in one place. But back to the messaging feature here, you can do all the typical things that you could do with an email. You can reply to all, you can forward it, you can mark it as unread if you want to highlight it for yourself. You can stick it into your archive so that it no longer shows up in your main email list, and you can print it. So you can do all the usual things. To navigate back to the main messages, you just click on messages at the top, and it brings you back to messages. There's also a tab here for sent messages. So any messages you've sent to your team show up here. You can look at any archived messages. So again, ones that you've pulled out of this main view. And if you come over to this blue box on the right-hand side, you can compose a message. On the files icon, if you click on that, you will see a list of files that are available to you in your child's medical record that you can view. And in some cases that you can also interact with. So you can see the BLAF form is here, and we're going to talk about how to fill that out in a minute when we get down to tasks. But any form that you have signed will show up here automatically. Any form that has been assigned to you to interact with will show up here automatically. Other files that are part of the medical record, for example, the daily session notes from any direct services or notes made by your clinician, don't automatically show up here for you, but we can always share them to you. So if there's ever a session note that you want to see, or some other record within your child's file that you would like to see, you just have to let your clinician know or the office know, and we can share that to you, and then it will show up here. Advantages of that, for example, your treatment plans can be available here, your child's treatment plan, and when that is the case, if you need to then share it to another professional, for example, to your developmental pediatrician, or if the speech therapist or occupational therapist wants to see it, you don't have to then you don't have to talk to the office about that, right? You can just go ahead, download it yourself and send it over. You don't have to arrange for the office to do that as a transfer of a medical record, because it is a medical record that you have access to. And when you click on a particular document here. It will give you the option of downloading that file, and you can just go ahead and download it. You can preview what it looks like before you download it. It also gives you information about it, when it was created, who owns it, that's like what client owns it, and so forth. And when it was last modified is in there as well. We're going to come back actually to this view of this file in a few minutes when we talk about tasks. But for now, this is the main information I wanted you to see, which is how to access it and download it. Okay, I'm moving down the list. GreenBox is not using the billing icon. That is something that some providers use to do invoicing for any copays and things like that. We are continuing to use an external system for that. And so you can just skip over that tab anytime. There's nothing going on there. The schedule tab will take you to your schedule. Unfortunately, I don't have anything on the schedule, but it will take you to the schedule where you can just double check things. You can, because your schedule doesn't really change, your standing schedule doesn't really change in a broad way, you typically wouldn't need to access it. But if you, for example, had communicated with the office about making a change for, you had to cancel a session, for example, then you might come back here just to double check that it wasn't showing up on your schedule any longer. If there was a shift in the time, you usually have sessions at 10 o'clock in the morning, but you had communicated with the office and with your therapy team that it was going to be 10:30 on a particular day. You could just go here and verify that it's actually showing up as 10:30 and not 10 o'clock, so that you know that everybody's going to show up at the right time. And that's the main advantage of that. Back on the dashboard, there is a list of upcoming appointments, and so that's a quicker way to see what's coming up like right away. Right, and we'll see that in a minute. All right. So the two most exciting, to me at least, tabs that we're going to look at here are tasks and clinical. In tasks, your clinician is able to assign you, so to speak, things to do. Rather than bring you a paper and pencil assessment or sit down and interview you for an assessment, we can send it to you through the system to complete at your own time and at your own pace. We can send you things through here to sign if there's signatures we need on things, other things like that. So here we are in tasks, and it shows you a list of the tasks that have been assigned. In this one, I've set it up so that there's a complete the BLAF assessment. That corresponds, again, back to that message that I sent you as a client. And if I click here on the complete BLAF task, right, it will give you then more information. So please complete the indicated form and mark task as completed when done. So when you complete the task, you can come over here and click this little check mark, and the little check mark marks it as complete, and then sends a notification to the BCBA or BCABA or the office, whoever assigned the task, that the task has been completed. To access what they sent, so they sent a file here, you can click on the little file folder that's below it. That will take you back to this page that we already looked at when we were looking at files. And rather than continue on this tab, which is the Files Detail tab, you'd click on the Note/Form tab, and it takes you to a different view of this. And in this case, what it takes you to is the actual form itself for you to complete. You can see here the form has several sections. The BLAF assessment, section that's for office use only. That's our scoring grid that the clinician uses to compile the results of your assessment. And then there's a footer that's just part of the document that shows up when we're done. Here at the BLAF, if you click on that, it will pull up the actual assessment form to be completed. There will be text boxes, text areas, fields for you to fill in some cases. though you may see checkboxes, drop downs. This one has a few things that autofill. So because the BCBA had assigned things, so it shows up with some autofill. Today's date is the date that that I originally started this document. You can change the date here to today's date if you'd like. And this one in particular has drop downs. So if you click on it, you will see the drop down and you can choose the rating that goes along with the question. And you just go through and you would answer all of the questions, finished the form, click save. And it's going to give you that little yellow box up there. Sometimes you don't need to worry about that. As long as you see the thing on the bottom there that says file saved, eventually you're golden. And then you can come back over to the tasks tab here to the task, click it as completed. Okay. And now the BCBA will be notified that you finished it and that it's available to be scored. So much easier than some of the other ways that you might have had to interact with forms. All right. You can also add tasks, so you can assign things to a BCBA to do, or to a team member. I'm not sure the times when you might do that, but it can happen. And also, in addition to assigning assessments and things like that, they could also use this tab to ask you to engage in certain behaviors. So please make sure that the table area is clear for session today, or a reminder, we're planning on being outside today. Just mark this as completed so that I know that you are aware of that. Things like that. Okay. The tab that I'm hoping, or the icon here that I'm hoping that you interact with on a regular basis, is clinical. That's the one down here at the bottom. And when you click on clinical, it will display this screen, which has two sections. There's a tab that's called Learning Trees and a tab called Sessions. And we're going to go through both of them, starting with Learning Trees. On the Learning Tree tab, the Learning Tree in CentralReach lingo is your child's therapy plan, your treatment plan. It's where the BCBA actually creates the programming that the BCBA or the RBT is then collecting data on during sessions. So one of the things that you can do in the learning tree is you can actually see progress. You can see all the different things that are going on in your child's treatment, and you can look at graphs and track progress. So let's go do that. Let's click on this learning tree. The learning tree has a bunch of different folders here on the left-hand side. In CentralReach lingo, these things are called branches. So if you ever hear someone talk about a branch, a learning tree branch, that's what this is. But they display here the way you would typically display folders, right? Including the little folder icon. The client information section of the learning tree is a place where we keep the information that is used on your treatment plan reports. So your progress reports, your treatment plans. So for example, medical background here, we can take a look at. When you click on something and then you scroll below it, it takes you down and you can see it down here. So this, for example, is the medical background for test patient. And you can see this looks exactly like what you're used to seeing on the treatment plans, right? And that's because this is when we complete a treatment plan, this information is picked up and put onto the plan, right? So you can go through the client information section and make sure everything is accurate. It's a good way to let us know about that. You don't have access to actually making any changes yourself within the learning tree. So if you discover that there is an error, just let the BCBA know or let the office know, and we can go in and fix it. close that folder. There's an assessment folder. Any of those assessments that you are completing through the system, through the tasks tab, will show up here. If there are behavior reduction goals, there will be a separate behavior reduction folder with the programming under that. Parent goals, we're going to come back to in a minute after I pop you down and show you the actual therapy goals that we're working on for this particular test patient. So what you will see at the bottom of the list here is any of the goal areas that your child is working on. Test patient is working on communication skills. You might also see things like social skills, adaptive skills, other folders that are like that here, depending on your child's own treatment plan. Right? But test patient is just working on communication skills. Right. And when you click on communication skills, that opens it up to some additional folders. And these are, again, in CentralReach Talk, this thing here, communication skills, is called a long-term goal. The folders below it are called short-term goals. Right? And in this case, test patient is working on tacting colors, shapes, and functions, and also on tacting in the natural environment. You click on these, it shows you the actual targets that data is being collected on. So for test patient here, under the short-term goal of text, colors, shape, and function, we have targets that are motorcycle, truck, toothbrush, ruler, and tub, and then cleaner, mail truck, dad, snow, and rain. There are some other targets. Again, if you scroll down here, you can see the description of this short-term goal. It includes what the DSM criterion is, what the justification for the treatment goal is, the goal, any interventions we're using, and what the generalization planning is like. This is a sample one, so it's not done in the most professional way. For example, we wouldn't typically write a justification of the patient doesn't tact things, or the patient will tact things all the time. That's just my quick and easy way of putting information there. But again, this should look very familiar. It's how the treatment plans are set up that we submit to TRICARE. So that bulleted section in the down in the treatment plan for each goal, there's that little bulleted section, and these should correspond to the bullets that you're already used to seeing there. Now you'll notice that there is what looks like it should be a graph up here, and there's nothing going on. There's no data to display, and like, I'm pretty sure they're actually collecting data on that. What's going on? I mean, you're absolutely correct. They are collecting data on it, but the short-term goal level here is not a data collection level. So it doesn't show you anything in a graphic format. So to see that, you have to click on the targets themselves. And when you click on this target, you'll see, here you go. Now there's some data. So, you know, before we started working on this, what's called baseline, the test patient had a score of 20%, correct? When I presented motorcycles, truck, toothbrush, ruler, and tub, test patient got that correct 20% of the time. And now here in intervention, you can see the learning that's going on here. And this actually was 2 sessions that were run in the same day. So you may see that occasionally, that there's like 2 of them kind of chunked on top of each other, and that's because there were 2. You can see this for all of the graphs, and you know, it's a really good way to keep track of what kind of progress you're seeing, to have a starting point to have conversation with the BCBA. If you take a look at a graph and it doesn't look like it's increasing or decreasing, right? There are times when what we want to see, there are things that we want to see less of, but if you're not seeing that on the graph, you could ask them about that. Hey, what's going on? I'm not seeing a lot of progress on that. Is that normal? You know, is it just going to take a while, or is there something different that we could be doing, that you could be doing, and have that conversation? Okay. You can also see what goals the BCBA has assigned to you the targets and goals in the TRICARE requirement for parent involvement. So in this case, there are two that the BCBA has assigned. One is tracking tacting in the natural environment that corresponds down to this goal that we're working on here in session. And a second one here is taking turns during games. And you can take a look. We're going to actually look at this goal from a different perspective in a minute. But here you can see the data for taking turns. This is with one prompt for a turn. Here's data showing no prompts needed. I've only collected 2 data points on that for the in these different orientation meetings, but it this can also show you what your progress is, and it's a nice way to also track what you're up to. Okay. All right. So those are the clinical tabs, and again, you do not have edit access to this, so you don't need to worry about messing it up. You can click around through it. You can take a look at it. There's nothing that you can do in here that will be saved or change your child's programming. So you can, don't be afraid of this section. Okay. All right. The other thing I want to show you in clinical is this other tab called sessions. Depending on how the clinician has set up the collection of data for your parent targets that are required by TRICARE, you may or may not have access to an actual data sheet for yourself to just come in and record data yourself. Depending on the goals, some of the goals involve the BCBA actually checking your implementation. So they might watch you do something and give you corrective feedback about that, and keep track of how often they have to give you corrective feedback, things like that. Or they may have they may have you implement programming while they are present and collect data on that right there. So there are some ways in which the BCBA might be collecting data, but they may also ask you to collect some data yourself. And so for example, in this one, if we click on this session and go back to the, I had a problem stopping that session last time. There we go. If the BCBA has asked you to keep track of how your child does in turn taking when playing games, okay, they may have created a session data sheet for you where you can come in and you can record that information yourself. This data sheet looks just like the one that an RBT or BCBA or BCABA is using during sessions themselves, with the difference being what information is being collected. So during a typical therapy session, there is going to be a whole bunch of information here, lots and lots and lots of stuff, right? Because we're typically collecting data and progress on a whole bunch of different things. Typically for parents, there will be 1 or 2 things here, right, that you just would go in and make some recordings on, and not a huge complex thing. All right. In this case, going back to what we had in the learning tree, we have recording whether 1 prompt was needed for a turn or no prompts were needed for a turn. And those things correspond to the actual data collection section, which is here in the center. And you can then click on, oops, I'm going to start the timer. Thank you. There we go. And you click on things like, oh, they needed, I needed to ask them to take a turn. I got to add a data point, right? Or there was no prompt needed. Nope, they took a turn all by themselves. That's so cool. And then you're just adding, every time the behavior does occur, you just click a plus and it, it adds to it. Okay. Information about that target is here on the side. You can see the instructional notes are the instructions on how to implement. So you can say how to implement it. You pick a game, you prompt turn taking, you keep track of how many times Emma needs a prompt and how many times she takes a turn independently. Tells you when to implement it, like do that at least once a day. Who should be there? Mom and the sibling. And is there any other important information? If there was, it would be listed there as well. I want to make sure to point out that if the BCBA is interested in having you collect any data, they're not just going to assume that because you've viewed this recording, that you know how to do it. And they will walk you through initial data collection so that you understand how to go through this process for the particular thing that they're interested in you keeping track of. It would be, it doesn't serve anybody well to have this assigned to you to actually work on and then have you not know what to do about it. So they will provide you with that information. And if you ever feel like you don't know what you're doing with a data sheet, you should ask and have them clarify for you what they would like you to do. And as I said, they have all also received training in how to interact with the portal here for you, but they also just normally already know how to interact with data sheets, because that's, as I said, this are the same data sheets that we're using, the same format that is used in direct therapy, right? So they should be able to walk you through any difficulties that you're having. When the session is over, you've collected all the data, you've finished taking turns, the game is all done. You click the Graph All button, select Graph All and end the session. And that information has now been added to the data and to the medical record. At that point, you can just navigate away from that. You're all done, finished. You can go back to your dashboard. If we wanted to, we could go over here to clinical. Let's go back to the learning tree real quick, to parent goals, to turn taking. And you can see what we just added. This was the data that was added during this orientation right there. I have one last thing I want to show you before letting you go, and that is how to change notification settings. And this is an important one, I think, because if you get a new message or a new task assigned to you, you may, let's be realistic, you're not checking CentralReach graphs once a day or anything like that. So if you're not in the system, well, how do I know that there's been a new task assigned to me? Or how do I know they sent me a new message? And you can use the notification settings to receive a notification to your email, external email, the one that's used as your login here, or to your phone as a text message. So to change the notification settings, you go to the little U icon up here and select notification settings. By the way, you can also customize how this looks. You can change the color, like the overall thing. You could change the color if you wanted. Right. And you go to notification settings. If you would like to receive notifications about things as text message, then you can complete the mobile setup here first. And this is, again, a fairly typical kind of a way of setting up mobile messaging, text messaging from another system. And that, or you can just get them sent to, notifications sent to your email. You can select which kinds of things you get notifications about and whether you want them to go to your email or to text messages. So if you get a new message in the system, would you like to get a notification via email or text message? You can click either or both. Again, we don't use the invoicing system here. Scheduling, you could request email notification if an appointment was modified or canceled, again, as a double check fail-safe that if you communicated or the technician has communicated that they can't, do a session or whatever, you could get an email notification that, verifies that for you. And then the last one is if there's been any tasks that have been assigned to you. or tests that were changed or modified, or the ones that were completed. If you've assigned a test to someone else and they've completed it, you can get a text or an email letting you know that that happened. Okay. And that's it. That's the system. It's hopefully going to increase your contact with your child's progress. You will be able to see the things that we are working on very easily. We've always been happy to share that with you, but this kind of puts it at your fingertips, so to speak. And you can look at it anytime, day or night. You can always log in here, except for when CentralReach is doing maintenance, and they publish a maintenance schedule. There's like, I think, middle of the night on Sundays, kind of a thing where you don't have access to it. But that aside, you have access and you can keep track of how things are going. Once again, this was a very quick orientation / tutorial. And if you have questions, if you have problems, we are always here and available to walk you through specific things. That includes both the office and also the clinicians that you work with, as they have all been trained in how to use the client portal as well. And with that said, have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for being a part of your child's therapy team.